Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo DisneySea are perhaps the most different Disney parks from all the others around the world. Some of the different things they do are fantastic, but a lot of them will surprise and even shock you, as they can make your day a lot worse, and I really wish they'd do things the way that the other Disney parks do. But Tokyo Disney does things differently. This is because they're the only Disney parks to not be owned or operated by Disney at all. Oriental Land Company, or OLC, run the parks, and whilst they take a lot of cues from the Walt Disney Company, over its 41 years of operation, there are a lot of things the company do very differently. This has led to some of the most beautiful areas and jaw-dropping attractions in the world, but there are some things I really wish we did in the Tokyo parks that other Disney parks do. So, what are they, why are they a problem, and how do you work around them to still have a good time when you're here? I'm Jordan at 8-Bit Theme Park Japan. I live in Tokyo and go to Tokyo Disney all the time, and in this video, I'm going to tell you 21 things I wish Tokyo Disney did, which other Disney parks do. First up, we're going to look at character dining. Yeah, that's right, you remember all those childhood memories you have of sitting down at a restaurant and Mickey or Winnie the Pooh or Alice in Wonderland coming over to your table, posing for a picture and having a little chat with you. It's a really nice environment and an organic way to interact with the characters, and it's one that we had in Tokyo Disney for a very long time, but now there is only one character dining location in the entire resort, and it's in a hotel. And to eat there, you need to stay at the hotel and have a reservation for the restaurant. So we technically do have character dining, but yeah, only if you're staying at the Ambassador Hotel and you're lucky enough to get a reservation for this restaurant, which is one of the main reasons that Japanese guests will stay in the hotel to begin with. So it's very, very difficult to get them. And even then, okay, you're staying at the Ambassador Hotel, and you managed to get a reservation for the character dining. Excellent. Well done. Well, there's only one character there. It's Mickey in his chef costume. Okay, well, that's fine. It's Mickey. It's the mouse. You know, cool. We'll meet Mickey. That's great. He doesn't come to your table. He just stands there, and you get, like, an allotted time to go and pose with him in a photo, and then come and sit back down at your table. So even the one location that kind of has character dining is not even really doing it properly, so that's something I really wish we had here. And I honestly don't understand why we don't, because there used to be several character dining locations in the parks, and they just quietly wiped them out one by one. Maybe it's because they want more people to fork out for the dining shows? I don't know, but it seems like money on the table to me. Another thing I have fond childhood memories of from visiting the American parks when I was little is getting there before the park opened and seeing this little ceremony that they do where they bring the rope out and they invite some kids to come up and open the rope and open the park. I remember this fondly because I was chosen as one of them a very long time ago. I can remember the thrill of being chosen from this small crowd of guests to come and wave a flag and officially open the Magic Kingdom in the morning. It was a really special feeling. But here in Tokyo, we can't really do that because most of the guests arrive before the park opens. So there are enormous crowds every day before the park gates even open. So the idea of letting some guests in and giving them this special thing that only a few people can see is just not really feasible. So I do understand why they don't do it. One thing they do at Tokyo Disneyland is some of the characters will come out into the entrance plaza and kind of wave and pose to guests, which is pretty cool. But again, guests get here super early, and the only people that can see that are the people right at the front. One little thing that you can do is, like 5 minutes before the park opens, if you're in a big group and someone doesn't mind missing out, ask one person to stay where you're waiting, and the rest of you can kind of walk up the side to the front and get a little glimpse at it. It can be pretty hard to see, but it is a cute thing we do. Still, I wish we did the actual rope drop because it's just so nostalgic for me. Speaking of getting into the park early and how popular the parks are very early on here, if you're anything like me, you'll have lots of happy memories of staying at a Disney hotel and that giving you tons of extra time in the parks only for hotel guests. I've heard that this is pretty busy these days. I haven't been to the American parks for a while, but when I was a kid, it used to mean that you had the park to yourself. You could just get on all the rides in no wait time, and it was so special. Well, how about at Tokyo? So you're gonna say that they don't do that as well, right? Well, no, actually, we do have early opening for hotel guests. Okay, so how long is it? 15 minutes. Yeah, 15 minutes. And that might sound like nothing, because it is, but it's a different kind of reward from the other ones. You're not getting that I have the park to myself kind of thing. What you are getting is first dibs on a priority pass, which is like an old fast pass. First dibs on any DPA, which is paid priority queue skipping or priority seating for shows and parades. You also get to the front of one of the standby queues, so you're basically getting on an extra ride as well as all that. And you can get hotel reservations and get your show lotteries before everyone else. So it is a great benefit, and it is worth using when you come here. But it's nothing compared to, gosh, I remember going to Magic Kingdom as a kid, and the park would be open until like 3 a.m. Like, the park closed at 12 for normal guests, and then it closed at 3 a.m. for hotel guests, and nobody was in there. We were just going round and round on Haunted Mansion and just wandering through the park like we had it to ourselves. It doesn't really work like that here, but those 15 minutes are worth it. If you can afford a Disney hotel and you're thinking, oh, they only get 15 minutes, forget that. It is a good benefit for here, but yeah, it's nothing like the American parks had. Another thing you can find in the American parks, and actually every Disney castle park has this, except for Shanghai. And we kind of have one, but it's not really the same as the other ones. So what I'm talking about here is the train. Every Disney castle park, except for Shanghai, has a train. This is not only a really convenient way to get around the park, as they have multiple stations, but it also gives you some beautiful views, and it's just a really nice sit-down ride, as my mum would say, as in something that you can just rest your legs on, relax, and still soak up the vibes of the park. I mean, hey, some of them even go through the rides. Like at Paris, you can go through Pirates of the Caribbean, and at Magic Kingdom, you go through Splash Mountain. Those moments are super cool. Okay, well, you may know that Tokyo Disneyland do have a train, the Western River Railroad. But it's very different in a lot of ways. One is that it only has one station, so it's a round trip for everyone. The reason for this is kind of interesting, as it's because when the park opened in 1983, there was a law that meant that you had to pay a ticket price for a train journey that would take you from one location to another, and that included inside the theme park. So as a way around this, the park decided to just have one station, and then it's just an amusement ride. This is also why you have to pay for the monorail here as well, but we'll get to that a little bit later. I do like the Western River Railroad. It's a nice little sit-down ride. A lot of it, if you're sitting on the left side, you end up just looking at a wall, and you can even see Xperi, the shopping district, which is another thing I'll talk about later. But yeah, if you're on the right side, it's a pretty nice ride, and we do even have the diorama that you can find at Disneyland in California. However, I do often miss having some transport that moves you around the park, and having a train that wraps around the entire park is a staple of Disney parks. I really wish we had it in Tokyo. Not to mention that it gives some kinetic energy to Main Street USA, but that's another thing that I'll get to later on. Oh, World Bazaar. How I love to hate you. Okay, so going back to opening times, yes, the hotel guests get to get in 15 minutes early. The park guests all arrive super early. How about the opening times then? Well, they're not the worst, but they're not the best. Every day, unless there's a sponsorship event on, the park will be open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 12 hours. Before the pandemic, when ticket prices were cheaper, you used to be able to stay in the park from 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. So the fact that this is downgraded over the years, I think upsets me even more. But even back then when the park closed at 10, I used to reminisce again about staying in the Magic Kingdom until 3 a.m. or being at Disneyland until 1 a.m. And we all know that it's in the evening when the parks are their most beautiful, when it feels the most special, and you just don't want to leave. So every extra minute you can have in the evening is so precious. And the park's closing at 9. Like in the summer, you're basically getting an hour and a half, maybe, of it actually being dark in the parks. Okay, so maybe you can loiter around a little bit afterwards though, right? You can't go on the rides, but you can hang around. Well, no, they shove you out of these parks pretty quickly. Even the shops down Main Street will close, gosh, at latest like half an hour after the park's closing. So not only do you not get to have many evening hours in the park, you also get this sudden feeling of being ushered out of the place. Whereas what I remember as a kid from going to the American parks is wandering around Main Street for hours after the place closed. And maybe that's my mind exaggerating a little bit, but here they do definitely usher you out, and all the cast members screaming at you to move through the shops more quickly and telling you that you can't go in the shops because they're closed. It's not a nice way to end your day. But now that you're aware of it and you know what to prepare for, it'll be fine. The rides close dead on 9 p.m. On the minute. 9:01, you're not going to get in. 8:59, you will. Well, having said that, so Tokyo Disney has this problem that causes a lot of issues, and that's that cast members arrive to the parks mostly using public transport, mostly using the trains, and some of them have to travel pretty far to work here. So they need to be able to get home after work, right? And a lot of trains, especially further out, tend to stop running around 12 o'clock. So if a ride has a 3-hour queue and you close the queue at 9 o'clock, the poor cast members can't get home. So that's why I'm pretty sure no other Disney park does this, and it really sucks. But Tokyo Disney closed the queues before the park closing. For example, if Beauty and the Beast has a 2-hour queue, the park closes at 9, Beauty and the Beast is going to close around 7 p.m. They normally push them a little bit later, and if the rides have like half an hour or less, they tend to stay open until the park closes. But this is definitely something you want to be aware of, because if you're used to getting in a queue last minute for one of the big rides, like I am, you can't do that here. It is really deflating when you get over to a ride just before the park closes, thinking you're going to be able to get through the queue really quickly because nobody's going to skip in front of you, and it's already closed. They don't like make announcements that the rides are closing or anything, but they do show you in the app, so it's definitely worth having the app. And yeah, in the evening, if you're planning to do a big ride at nighttime, just keep checking the app from like 7 p.m. and make sure that the rides aren't closing already. Okay, so I said earlier that on the Western River Railroad, if you're sat on the left side, you can see Ikspiari, the shopping district. And I said I was going to talk about that later, and later is now. I'm going to talk about it now. So our shopping district sucks. So much so that recently on my podcast, the Land of the Rising Sun podcast, check that out if you like podcasts. It's a casual chat between me and another Tokyo local who's lived here for 20 years and been going to Tokyo Disney for 20 years, so he knows a lot more than even I do. It's a very casual chat every week, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, on that, we were talking about the Fantasy Springs Hotel, where we're going to be staying on opening weekend. I'm so excited for that. And I said, you know what they really need? They need like a shopping district near the hotel, something you can do in the evenings after the park's closed. And I totally forgot that we have one. We have a shopping district. It's called Ikspiari. It's very, very close to the train station, Maihama Station, where you connect to the monorail to travel all around Tokyo Disney Resort. But it's just not very good. It's just not very good. It's mostly indoors, which gives it more of a generic mall kind of feeling. And there are definitely much better malls around Tokyo. I mean, this is Tokyo. There's a lot of competition, right? There are some areas, like close to the Disney shop, that do give you a bit of that Disney feel. But Ikspiari really is a last resort. The only reason I ever really go there is if I'm visiting with a friend, like Alex from the podcast, and, you know, the park's closed at 9, and we want to just hang out and chat for a little bit before going home. That's basically the only reason I go there, but there's some nice enough restaurants, you know, and the shops are not much to go off. Even the Disney store there isn't the best one in Tokyo at all. I would much sooner recommend Shibuya's Disney store, which is like a classic Disney store. It still has like all the models and things. It's super quirky and super fun. Or the modern one in Shinjuku, which, you know, is a modern Disney store, so it's a lot more kind of sleek and like an Apple store with Mickey logos on it. But it is huge, and they do have a lot of cool stuff in there. So if you're visiting Tokyo, go and see those instead. Don't bother going to Ikspiari. It's not worth it. And especially when I compare it to Disney Springs in Florida, or even Disney Village in Paris, or Downtown Disney in California, Ikspiari sucks. It just does. You don't feel like you're in the Disney resort when you're in there, which I think is the point, right? I think the whole point of these places is, yeah, they do have different franchises and different restaurants and shops that come in there, but you're supposed to still feel like you're in the Disney bubble. And especially as a hotel guest, it's something for you to do after the park closes, or as well as the parks, you know, some other stuff to have. But unless you're staying at the Ambassador, which is right next to Xperi, all the other ones are a monorail ride away, and you'd probably rather just stay in these beautiful hotels than go into Xperi. So I really think we have a vacancy to add some extra shopping stuff and restaurants and nightlife around the nice Disney hotels, the ones where the people have money, you know, and turn the entire resort into this cohesive place where you can enjoy every bit of it, rather than there being gaps between the hotels where you just ride the monorail or don't do anything. There's no reason to walk between them, and I think that's a shame. Another thing they could do with Xperi is just flatten the thing and build a third theme park there, which I think could happen in the future. It's a weird shaped plot of land, especially because the train and a major road run through there, but given the right amount of investment, Disney worked very closely with JR, Japan Rail, the train operators. Anyway, maybe they could figure that out. Anyway, that's a topic for another video. I could talk all day about a third gate. Maybe I will do that soon. So another thing that struck me the first time I came here that was very different to other Disney parks I'd been to was Mickey. I mean, Mickey didn't strike me himself. He didn't lash out and punch me. I think I'd have a pretty good lawsuit if he did. No, seeing Mickey in the shows here, it's old Mickey. His mouth doesn't move. And I've become so used to seeing his mouth move in the performances that it really seemed strange that we didn't have that here, and we still don't. All the characters with their moving eyes and mouths look so much better, and I think it's a huge improvement, especially for the stage shows. I really wish they'd kept pushing Talking Mickey as a meet and greet. I think being able to talk to these characters is amazing, and that's one of the best things about meeting face characters, is that you can actually have a conversation with them. And, you know, everyone loves meeting the characters, but being able to talk to them, it just adds that extra level of personalization. Like, rather than feeling like they're just going through the poses and the visual gags that they do with everyone, maybe they're going to say your name, you know, maybe they're going to actually talk about how your day went, and you can sort of play off their improvisation, which is so much more fun. But I do understand the limitations of that, especially, you know, being here where everything's in Japanese. Like, if I go and meet Mickey and he's talking Japanese and I start talking English to him, that's gonna be tricky, right? But for the shows, why not? It's perfect for shows. You just sync it up to the audio and let them go. Like, I really don't understand why they don't do that. I mean, if I had to think of a reason, is probably the reason for a lot of things in this list, in that OLC just keep doing things the way they do them. They find a way that works and they keep doing it that way. And sometimes that's for the better, you know, and sometimes it's not. And in this case, I really think it's not. I really think that being able to see the characters' mouths moving as they're talking adds so much to a performance, and I hope we get it one day, but I'm not holding my breath. So speaking of performances, how about the shows here? Well, I've already done a video about how things have changed since the pandemic, so I'm not going to go on another rant about how they've all gone massively downhill since then. But what I will say is, something that's always been tricky here is actually seeing the damn things. You need to enter a lottery to be able to see the theater shows here. And some of them are outside, so you think, oh, I'll just be able to stand outside the theater and see them. But the vast majority of those are, like, obscured by trees and things, so you can't even get a good view. I don't know why they try and punish people for not winning a lottery when they get through the gates. So yeah, for those who don't know, as soon as you go through the entrance, you can use the entry request in the Tokyo Disney Resort app, and that's a lottery for the shows. So even if you're the first guest in the park, you might not win any of those lotteries. You might not be able to see the shows. The shows are enormously popular here, so I do understand that they need a system. And it's nice to have something that's not first come, first serve, because so much else is. And we already have guests coming way too early. We don't need any reason for them to come any earlier. But it's a real bummer when you get in the park and you can't see any shows. I mean, it's another thing that is a victim of its own success, I guess, that the shows are just too popular. I mean, they could run more of them, but they would just fill up as well, I suppose. A lottery system does kind of make sense, but it's a shame when you get to that point in the early afternoon when your legs are starting to get tired and you just want to sit down and watch a show and you can't. I think another thing that suffers because of the popularity of the entertainment here as well is that we don't really have any, like, small, intimate venues. Like, Alex from the podcast recently went to Hong Kong's new Frozen area, and he said there's this lovely little show, and it's just so small and intimate. And we just couldn't do that here. We can't do that here because everyone wants to see all the shows. So we do need some kind of system like a lottery, I suppose. This next one's a bit out there, and there's only one other Disney resort around the world that actually does this, but I love it, and I really wish that we would do it too. And hey, I wish they'd do it in California and some other places as well. That's water parks. The summers here are very, very hot. So hot, in fact, that the parks, as they are now, will have shows that just spray water over the guests. Guests want to be cooled down. They want to be in water. Tokyo Summerland, which is the most popular water park here, it gets absolutely rammed in the summer. Everyone wants to go to a water park. And in Tokyo, we have some decent ones. Like, Summerland is pretty cool. Yomiuri Land has a pretty good pool. Nagashima Spa Land is a little further away, but they have a really great water park in there as well. But none of them are, like, themed. Like, Summerland has some nice themed areas. It's pretty cool there. But having a Disney-level water park would be so cool here. However, I do understand that those... Speaking of Tokyo Summerland, it really struggles to stay open because the summer months are incredibly popular, and then the rest of the year, they don't know how to make any money. They tried to build a dry theme park next to it, but it just wasn't very popular, so now they're doubling down on the water park, but yeah, they struggle to stay afloat. Haha. No pun intended. But a Disney water park would be super, super cool. I fully understand why we don't have one. And hey, if we have space for another park, we should absolutely build a third theme park, not a water park. But it would be a cool thing to have. Well, you know what else would be cool to have? Hey, if we had a third park, or even just with the two that we have now, being able to park hop. Park hopping! It's the best! Both of our parks are so different from each other. And it makes for a fantastic resort because they both complement each other so well. Whenever I spend a day in one of the parks, part of me wishes I'd gone to the other one because it just offers exactly what the other one doesn't have, if that makes sense. Like when I'm at Tokyo Disneyland, I get all the nostalgia and I get to go on lots of these amazing dark rides and family rides, but I want some thrills and I want some more detailed environments and I want some nice places to relax. When I'm at DisneySea, I have thrill rides, I have places to relax and these beautiful environments, but I wish that I could just whiz around a few rides or just go on Haunted Mansion or Pirates of the Caribbean or something. I do think they're fixing that a little bit now with opening Fantasy Springs at DisneySea, more family dark rides at the DisneySea, and opening Space Mountain soon in Disneyland, another big thrill ride for Disneyland. So I think they're trying to balance them out a bit, but if you just let us move between the parks, you don't have to worry about any of that. Park hopping is awesome, it's so much fun, and I really, really miss it. Before the pandemic, we used to have park hopping, but even then it was weird. Like, even then, you had to buy a 3 or 4 day ticket. We don't have multi-day tickets anymore. You had to buy a 3 or 4 day ticket, and only on your 3rd and 4th days could you park hop. Yeah, it was always weird. And you have to pay to use the monorail to get between the parks as well, which kind of adds another weird thing. One thing you can do to get around this, and this might sound crazy, but when you look at the price of Tokyo Disney tickets in US dollars or whatever your currency is, you'll realize it's actually not that bad. You can buy a full day ticket for both parks, and then you can park hop. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but one of those is still cheaper than a 1 day ticket for a Disney park in America. So all these things I'm complaining about, hey, the tickets here are pretty cheap, especially if you're coming from overseas. But yeah, a proper park hopping option would be really, really nice, and it's something I miss a lot, and I think the resort would be so much better for it. So that's another thing I wish we did. Okay, another one I mentioned earlier and said I would get to, Main Street USA. Main Street USA is such a great entrance to the parks all around the world. As soon as you get in there, you go under the railway tracks, and then you see the castle emerge behind the street, and you have this long street and this walk along to the castle to get to it. And it's such an integral part of the Disney experience. When you arrive at Tokyo Disneyland, you see a building. Like, you could be forgiven for thinking this is a small indoor theme park, the way that the entrance is. And then you get inside and it's all covered by this roof, which completely kills the forced perspective of the buildings. It completely kills the idea that this is an actual place, and it obscures your view of the castle. I really wish we had a Main Street, or hey, even Mickey Avenue at Shanghai Disneyland. I love Mickey Avenue. It's great. I just wish we had an outdoor area there. And people are going to say, oh, but Tokyo's weather is not good. That's why they put the thing over the top. Okay, I mean, I live here. I know what the weather's like. It does rain a bit. I don't see how it's that much worse than like Paris or Florida, but yeah, we get rain and we get hot days where it's nice to be in the shade. Not that World Bazaar is actually shaded, but you know, it's some protection from the sun. Well, let's go to Disneyland Paris. Disneyland Paris have these gorgeous arcades along both sides of Main Street USA, which not only allow you an indoor area if the weather's not very good, but they're just attractions in their own right. They're gorgeous, and they offer other entrances into all of the shops as well to help guest flow. They're absolutely brilliant. I wish we could do that. Honestly, I would love if we flattened World Bazaar and built something completely new. I don't see it ever happening because the return on investment is, you know, like how much money are you going to make from that, really? You can't market that. And also, guests here are very used to it. It's been that way for 41 years, you know. That's nostalgic for them. Why would they change it now? But yeah, it's something I really wish we had. I know some people kind of like it because it makes us different and quirky, but who wants to be different and quirky if it's worse? Like, it's like saying, oh no, I don't want to eat a double cheeseburger. I'm going to eat a bag of rocks instead, because nobody ever eats rocks. That's so different and quirky. Like, no, give me the cheeseburger. Give me the thing that's good, you know? Like, I don't really like that reason. But I guess as a local, I have a slightly different opinion of these things. You know, when you're coming here on holiday and you want it to feel really different and fresh, maybe that's different to someone like me who goes there every week or so and just wants the parks to be as good as they possibly can and knows they could be better. Another thing that is definitely a locals issue, but I have to bring it up. Tokyo Disney Resort is the only Disney resort in the world to have 0 annual passes. None. Nothing. Not, oh, you can still get them if you've got an old one, you can still renew it, or you have to be on a waiting list, or sometimes they stop selling them. Nope, they don't sell them at all. It sucks. And that's why I have a Patreon. So if you want to support this channel and make sure I can still go to the parks regularly so that I can get lovely footage like what you're looking at right now, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. That's a huge help. I know not everyone can afford that, so if you can't afford that, just share these videos with anyone that you think might like them. That's a huge help as well. And if you can't be bothered to do any of that, thank you for just watching right now. This is great. It's been amazing seeing this channel grow, and I appreciate it so much, and being able to use my YouTube money to go to the parks is like a dream come true. So thank you so much to all of you, but especially the people who subscribe to my Patreon. You do get extra bonus features as well, like early access to videos, your name in the credits like you'll have seen at the start of this video, and even my personal message, so you can message me about an upcoming trip, or you can just message me about how I am. Why don't you just ask me how I am, hey? Everyone wants to talk to me about Tokyo Disney. Nobody just asks, how are you, Jordan? Okay, yeah, I miss annual passes enormously. I really, really wish they would come back. But in a recent financial report a couple of months ago, Tokyo Disney said, quote, they are not expected to return. So I don't think we're going to get those back anytime soon. Another thing I know is never going to change, but I don't really understand because the other Disney parks do it fine. This is a very specific thing, but seatbelts on Tower of Terror. Yeah, they all have seatbelts. You know, you'll always hear the stories of someone, right? Like, oh, they didn't used to have seatbelts, and I flew up to the ceiling when I was on it. No, they all have seatbelts, guys. Come on, let's be serious. So, what are you talking about, Jordan? They all have seatbelts. Well, they all have lap belts, right? They all have seatbelts across the lap, which means you can still get plenty of airtime. You can still stick your hands in the air and move around like you just do not care. But I always have like a shoulder seatbelt, like you're in a car. And they lock on really tightly, so you can't really move very well. It's a little bit uncomfortable, and it really kills your airtime. And what's the point of Tower of Terror if you're not going to get airtime, you know? That's the whole thing. That's the thing it does. It goes up and down, and you jump out of your seat. Another thing with Tower of Terror is that the ride cycle is pretty short. It's not as thrilling as the other ones. It's not as long as the other ones. Unless you come in spring when they do a special version that's a little bit longer. Which is even weirder, right? Because it's like they know that it's not that good. But like, why not just do the good version all the time? But yeah, seatbelts and Tower of Terror is something I would love to change, and it's something we only do in Tokyo. I don't know why. Another thing that's only in Tokyo, which is absolutely insane and will blow your mind, hotel guests have to pay to use the hotel pool. Yeah, I'll say that again. Hotel guests, you're staying in the hotel, you've paid hundreds of dollars to stay in a hotel, you have to pay again to use the pool in the hotel. Wild, right? Oh, so is this for every hotel, Jordan? No, this is only for the Miracosta. Oh, so the other hotels let you use the pool for free? No, the Miracosta is the only Disney hotel to have a pool. This is going to sound bonkers to people coming from America and even coming from other countries. It's pretty standard when you're paying these kinds of prices for a hotel to have a swimming pool, right? And the one at the Miracosta looks gorgeous. And that's another reason, like, I'm super excited to be going to Fantasy Springs Hotel when it opens. Just a few days after it opens. But they're charging more for Fantasy Springs than Miracosta, and I think that's a big ask. Miracosta is nicer in a lot of ways, and yeah, just objectively, it has a pool, and Fantasy Springs Hotel doesn't. So yeah, inclusive hotel pools in all the hotels is definitely something I would like to bring from abroad. Another thing I would like to bring from abroad that we'd have nothing of here, we have none of it, zero, is the Muppets. No Muppets here, nothing. Like, I know a lot of places don't have Muppet Vision, which is a shame. It's a fantastic attraction, and with the way that Country Bear and Tough to Be a Booger going in Florida, I do worry about its future. So yeah, I really wish we had that here, but also just Muppet stuff in general. Like I've seen in Christmas, in some of the American parks, you have like the actual Muppets there, which is awesome. And just like even Muppets merch and things, we have absolutely none of it here. Muppets babies are popular here. But the actual Muppets, I think they just missed Japan. I think it just didn't take off here. So that's a shame, because I love the Muppets, but yeah, not a big one. Now, this is one that's going to make some people very, very angry. Because it is a really stupid thing to say. And I get annoyed when people say this kind of thing sometimes. But I'm going to say it anyway. More English stuff. I know. You're at a Japanese theme park in Japan. Things are in Japanese, Jordan. Get over it. And to be honest, it's kind of a miracle that you can ride Pirates of the Caribbean and it's all in English. You can ride Haunted Mansion and the narration is in Japanese, but the songs and the animatronics, like Madame Leota and whatever, they're all speaking English. And even in the shows and things, they often use English versions of the songs. Not always. It's mostly Japanese. But they often use English versions. And weirdly, the original songs made for the parks, like the parade song or like the songs on the Baymax ride, they tend to be mostly in English, which is a weird thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm English. I can speak some Japanese, but if all the rides were in English, I would love that. That would be great. But they're not, and I completely understand why they're not, and that's fine. This next one goes back to the issue of cast members having to take public transport to get home after work and how that's an issue. But I remember going to California Adventure, this is when it was at California Adventure, to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, and it was just so good. It was so cool to like have the park to yourselves. It was so amazing doing the trick or treats around the park. My favorite part was the carnival games along what is now Pixar Pier, but at the time was Paradise Pier, as it should be. Instead, they were all free to play, and we never used to pay to play those kinds of things. So that was just amazing in itself. But then you won candy, you won sweets as the prize. And I remember the end of it, we were playing, you know, the game where you roll the ball and the horses have to go along the track. We were playing that, and at the end of it, because they had to get rid of all the sweets for the day, they just poured this bag of candy down like the chute where you throw the balls up, and they all just came towards us. We're all trying to grab them quickly. Those special events, I know they're expensive, and they've got very expensive now. And I know that some of them are pretty lackluster from what I'm hearing from abroad, but some of them are amazing. Like, some of them are really, really good. And we don't have any of them here. It's a bittersweet thing, you know, because on the one hand, those are really special and they are really cool. But on the other hand, the argument can definitely be made that we pay enough for a regular park ticket. How dare you close the park early and then charge me again to go back in later on? Having all of the offerings open to all of the guests who go every day is kind of neat. Like, I do understand the argument for that, but I want a not so spooky event. You'll have heard me talk about how events have gone downhill since the pandemic in other videos if you've watched those, and you'll have also heard me talking about this as well, but I'm going to talk about it again. Roaming entertainment, there's just not very much of it. And specifically, I want to talk about live musicians, because I'm a musician and I love live music in the parks, and we used to have a lot more, but there's not that much anymore. There's the guy on the piano bike in Main Street, who I love, he's great, and there's also the brass band, who I love, they're great. But that's it. We used to have drummers in Adventureland. We used to have the brass band in Big Band Beat. And there used to just be so much more going on around the parks. And I really missed that. This next one is another one that might be controversial, and it definitely has pros and cons, but OLC very rarely update or change the rides at all. And in some cases, that's great. Like Haunted Mansion, we still have the real hitchhiking ghost, not these CGI ones like in Magic Kingdom. And we still have a little log splashy ride that you might have heard of. We have a... You know, they tend to keep things the same for a long time. Hey, that's why World Bazaar is still the way it is, probably, you know? But sometimes you just wish that they would update things. Like the spider scene in Haunted Mansion. That part is the only part in the whole ride, actually, where I feel like, oh, that's kind of dated. Like, they should change that. They should update that. Another thing is the projector in Indiana Jones. It just looks really old and crappy because it's old and crappy. Little things like that we just don't replace seem strange to me. One is like the Monsters, Inc. Ride and Go Seek ride, which I adore. It's sponsored by Panasonic, but all the TVs in the queue are kind of old TVs, like they're not HD. I know this is such a tiny, stupid thing, but if I was Panasonic and I was sponsoring a ride, I would want them to be showing off our best TVs. Like every TV has the Panasonic logo. It has a huge Panasonic logo underneath it. I would want them to update that if I was them, but... Yeah, we do have new Star Tours, and we do have Jack Sparrow in Pirates, and we did actually update Jungle Cruise, and It's a Small World, to add the characters into It's a Small World. So, I guess we have some precedent for doing that. I was about to say, I just wish they'd do some stuff to Haunted Mansion, but we all know how that can go, so maybe it's better if they just leave it alone. One thing that gets updated very regularly in California, but not enough at all in Florida, is the monorail. I mentioned it earlier on, but we have a monorail in Tokyo, and it's pretty cute. It has Mickey windows and Mickey handholds and Mickey. But you have to pay to use it. And it's not much. Like, especially if you're here on holiday, you won't even care. You'll barely even notice, you know, it's nothing. But it just adds another little thing you have to pay for. Like, this is my argument against having paid queue skipping and paid parade viewing. People already come to the parks and feel like a huge burden over them, a huge thing that stops them from having a really nice time and wanting to come back again and again and again, is that feeling of, oh, we have to pay again. Oh, overpriced food, we have to pay again. Oh, the kids want to buy some merch, we have to pay again. And adding more of those little things, more of those micro moments of, I have to pay again, I don't think is a good thing. To be clear, if you stay at the Disney hotels, the monorail is included in the Disney hotels, but basically to get to DisneySea, you have to take the monorail. I sometimes do the 15-minute walk because I'm a local, but if you're coming from abroad, don't do that. Pay to take the monorail, of course. I wish it was free, but hey, I wish a lot of things were free, so add it to the list. Yeah, I mentioned just then, right, overpriced food, and the food here is not super expensive, again, especially with the exchange rate being absolutely terrible for people who earn yen like me, but being great for people like you coming from abroad. The food is going to be pretty reasonably priced, but the portions are not great. This has been said a million times, just about Japan in general, I think, especially for Americans coming over. The portion sizes are a lot smaller, and that's something you have to get used to. Thankfully, Tokyo Disney do have a lot of great snacks, so what I tend to do is I'll have like 1 or 2 meals a day, but spend most of the day grabbing snacks. You do have to be careful on busier days. Sometimes the snack stands get very, very busy, and you can end up spending more of your day queuing for food than you do queuing for rides. But we have recently introduced mobile ordering, and if you check the menus, a lot of the food items that are only at like a small stall will also be available in a counter service restaurant where you can mobile order. So for example, the churros, maybe there's a half-hour queue for the churro stand that only sells churros, but you could mobile order Tomorrowland Terrace, the restaurant in Tomorrowland, and you could get a churro there without having to wait. And hey, maybe you want to grab some Mickey Nuggets when you're there as well, or whatever else you might want. Finally, this is something that was once in California, is still in Florida, and I think people kind of like it. People in the fandom tend to bring it up a little bit, and that is a people mover. Bring us the people mover. Our Tomorrowland is so static. The addition of Baymax's Happy Ride added a lot of kinetic energy to the area, which is great, but you know what would add even more kinetic energy? Having a people mover moving the people around the Tomorrowland. And hey, we're updating Tomorrowland right now. Our Space Mountain's going to close in a few months. Buzz is going to close a few months after that. It's all going to be replaced by brand new stuff. If we're getting a new Tomorrowland, Let's get a brand new people mover. If you want to learn more about that Tomorrowland, you can check out this video where I talk about the future of Tokyo Disneyland's Tomorrowland and how it could be even bigger than Fantasy Springs coming to DisneySea. So I really think you'll enjoy this video where I go deep in everything we know about Tokyo Disneyland's new Tomorrowland.